Welcome to Debt Matters. Today we're examining a core challenge, something that really impacts profitability for, well, almost any business selling goods or services. I'm talking about the disputed invoice.
Right.
And this isn't just, any old unpaid bill.
Right.
It's specifically when non-payment comes from a disagreement. The buyer saying, hey, I didn't get what I paid for, or maybe it wasn't on time.
Exactly. And our mission today really is to give you, the listener, a clear, reliable playbook.
Okay.
We want to distill a method, a kind of step-by-step process that gives you structure, consistency, especially when you're facing buyers who are refusing to pay what's on the invoice.
And it's not just about winning the argument, is it?
No, not at all. It's about having an auditable, repeatable system, something that helps you secure that revenue, sure, but also, crucially, without completely blowing up important client relationships.
Okay, let's unpack this then. So a buyer raises an issue about payment. The very first, the most critical action in this whole flow is classifying that complaint. Why is that classification step, separating one type from another? Why is that so fundamental? Why not just, I don't know, treat every non-payment the same?
Well, fundamentally, it comes down to resource allocation. Think about it. If you treat a simple admin hiccup like it's a massive contract battle, you just hemorrhage internal time and, frankly, money. So that initial separation is vital. We have to distinguish between what's just a simple query and what's an actual dispute.
Right. Can you give us a practical example? How do those two look different on the ground operationally?
Absolutely. So a query, think of it as usually administrative. It's not really contentious, like the buyer saying, we never got the invoice copy, or maybe this invoice references the wrong purchase order number. Simple stuff.
Okay. Needs fixing, but it's straightforward.
Exactly. It requires an immediate, pretty simple resolution. You send a duplicate PDF, you update a reference field. They're like administrative speed bumps. That's all.
And the goal there is just fix the query fast, payment gets unlocked, everyone moves on.
Precisely. Query resolution, ideally, you're looking at hours, maybe a day max, not months.
Okay.
Now, if it's not that simple, if it can't be resolved immediately because the buyer is actually questioning the quality or the price or the quantity delivered, maybe the timing.
The substance of the deal.
Yes. Then it moves into being formally classified as a dispute.
That sounds like just ticking a different box on a flowchart. But that formal classification, moving from query to dispute, that's where the internal cost of this non-payment really starts to climb, doesn't it?
Yeah.
What does that classification trigger inside the company, strategically speaking?
Oh, absolutely. It triggers the high-cost formal investigation phase. This is where your standard accounts receivable process kind of pauses, and the company has to start building its case, essentially. It's a defensive file. And this is really crucial because if you fail to properly classify and then escalate a true dispute quickly, you can easily add days, even weeks, to your days sales outstanding, your DSO metric. And that just quietly eats away at your cash flow.
Okay, so it's confirmed as a dispute. Now, the seller has to sort of go on the offensive internally, gather all the proof. What kind of evidence are we talking about?
Yeah.
What does the seller absolutely need to pull together to back up their claim that, yes, we delivered exactly what we promised?
Yeah, the process demands a really thorough, almost adversarial internal review. You need to look at every single record tied to that specific transaction.
Everything.
Everything. You're checking the contracts, verifying all the agreed upon terms, and critically confirming that the service or product delivery happened exactly as planned. Honestly, if your internal documentation is sloppy at this stage, you've probably already lost the dispute before you even talk to the buyer again.
Wow. So what specific documents carry the most weight here?
The ones the client actually touched or signed, those are golden. We're talking specifically about proof of delivery, or POD.
Right. The delivery confirmation slip.
Exactly what it sounds like. Documentation proving the goods were physically dropped off. Or, if it's a service industry, you're looking for formal service acceptance sign-offs, maybe project completion certificates. These documents, they become the company's verifiable shield, your proof.
Okay, so it sounds like this isn't just a job for the finance team working in isolation. You need to pull in the people who actually, executed the order. Which departments usually get dragged into this review? And maybe why do they sometimes clash during this process?
Yeah. This is often where internal friction can happen. The finance or AR team is usually driving the investigation, right?
Sure.
But they need information from sales, from operations, and often from logistics. And their priorities can differ. Well, sales. Their main focus is often client retention, future deals. They might lean towards just issuing a quick credit note to keep the client happy, maintain goodwill.
Avoid conflict.
Exactly. Whereas operations and logistics, they get pulled in to produce those PODs, maybe explain why something might have gone slightly wrong, or crucially prove why it didn't go wrong.
Right.
So you might have logistics showing a clean POD, but maybe sales heard from the client that the product was, I don't know, slightly off spec. That creates a gray area. The structured flow we're talking about really demands that all these departments, sales, ops, logistics, align their documentation. They need to present a single, unified position back to the buyer. If they don't have that alignment, the dispute just stalls, indefinitely sometimes.
Okay, so after that pretty rigorous internal investigation, sales, logistics, operations have all chipped in their evidence. The seller reaches this kind of moment of truth, deciding if the buyer's claim is actually valid or not. This decision points you down two very different paths in the flowchart, right? Let's look at those. Maybe start with the harder one internally.
Okay. Path A. The claim is valid. This is where the company essentially admits fault.
Right. We messed up.
Yeah. Maybe the internal review confirms, I don't know, a delivery driver missed the agreed window or operations shipped the wrong quantity. Statistically, many companies might try to fight this initially, but if you're following a defined process and the error is on the seller's side, well, the resolution needs to be quick, decisive, and corrective.
So if the company admits fault, what are the immediate next steps? How do you fix the financial side but also try to salvage the relationship?
You've got to move fast to rectify things, both financially and functionally. So financially, actions would include issuing a credit note that adjusts the invoice amount down. Or maybe you agree on a specific price reduction that reflects the shortfall.
Makes sense.
And functionally, you might agree to, say, replace the service or expedite a reshipment of the correct goods. But crucially, all internal records have to be updated immediately. You need to document the mistake, the correction made, and the new, probably reduced payment requirement. That stops the same error happening again, and it gives you that essential paper trail.
That sounds like a good mechanism for maintaining trust, actually. Admit the mistake, fix the invoice, ask for payment on the corrected amount. Okay. But what about the flip side? Path B. The claim is invalid. The investigation confirms the seller did everything right, met all the obligations, backed up by those ironclad PODs and internal records you mentioned. What's the required action then?
Right. This path requires a blend of, let's say, strategic diplomacy and firmness. Your goal is to shift the buyer out of dispute mode and back into payment mode. So the seller needs to clearly, professionally communicate the findings from their investigation. You're not just barking, "You owe us money."
No.
You're presenting the evidence. You're saying effectively, look, here is the signed POD dated Tuesday confirming you received it, and our internal contract notes match your purchase order number 456. Therefore, from our side, the dispute is closed.
So you show them the proof.
Exactly. The required action is to provide that supporting evidence you reviewed, literally show the buyer the proof that contradicts their claim, and then you reiterate their contractual obligation. This makes it clear that payment for the full original amount is now due. Immediately. You've essentially replaced their, perhaps emotional refusal with cold, hard, documented facts.
Okay, so let's follow that thread. You've done all the work. You've validated your position internally. You've shared the proof, shown them that signed proof of delivery, but the buyer still refuses to pay the invoice, which you now proven is valid. We're talking about someone actively ignoring contractual obligations they already signed off on. What happens then? Where does it go?
Right. This is that critical juncture. This is where the financial relationship shifts into its final stage, really. It leads to escalate.
Escalation. Okay.
Yes. And because the company has meticulously followed that whole process, classification, investigation, validation, the account is now confirmed as rightfully owed. It's no longer really subject to negotiation by the, say, the AR team or the salesperson.
The internal debate is over.
Precisely. That internal validation provides the necessary legal and operational justification to transition that debt. It moves beyond the immediate resolution department.
Okay.
And it gets formally transferred for collection or, ultimately, potentially legal action. And the beauty of having this structured flow is that the transfer isn't some arbitrary decision made in the heat of the moment.
No.
No, it's mandated by the process itself. It follows the company's established pre-approved debt collection policies.
Right, so that systematic transfer takes the emotional weight off the finance team, maybe the salesperson too, because they're simply executing a documented process, a process that already ruled the payment is valid. Okay, so this whole structured approach from that initial simple query check all the way through investigation, validation, and potentially escalation. Why is this so strategically valuable to our listener who's likely dealing with this kind of revenue leakage? What does it all mean for their business strategy?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, the main thing this structured approach provides is predictability and consistency.
Okay.
Think about it. In many sales-driven environments, there's always this immense pressure to compromise, right? To give ground to keep a client happy.
Sure, cave in on price or terms.
Exactly. But having a more rigid flowchart, a defined process, it actually removes the ability for internal teams to just arbitrarily forgive debt or keep extending payment terms simply to try and salvage a relationship. That kind of ad hoc approach often leads to really poor cash flow down the line. This consistency ensures every dispute, doesn't matter if it's a tiny $500 invoice or a huge $50,000 one, gets handled equitably, and it's fully auditable. You can track why decisions were made.
And that helps beyond just getting paid.
Absolutely. This discipline doesn't just secure revenue. Paradoxically, it can actually strengthen client relationships over time. Because when you do have to have that tough conversation about payment, you're not relying on personality clashes or subjective calls. You can point directly to the agreed upon evidence, point to a transparent process they were aware of. It removes a lot of the emotion.
So a defined process becomes this ultimate managerial tool for navigating these tricky payment disagreements. It helps move your teams past the back and forth arguing and onto an actual resolution, whether that resolution is, correcting your own error or successfully collecting the full debt owed.
Exactly. And this perhaps raises an important question for you, the listener, to consider in your own operations. If your sales teams, or maybe your operations teams, currently know that a disputed invoice probably won't be rigorously investigated, that it's actually more likely to just get written down or credited off to save the relationship, well, are you inadvertently incentivizing future disputes? Is your current process actually preventing non-payment, or is it just managing the messy consequences after the fact? Something to think about.
That's a really powerful point to end on. Thank you for taking the time to walk through this material with us today.